Hello and welcome to our webinar, The End of Greenwashing in Finance, the EU Taxonomy. I'm here with your host, Samuel Baumgartner, and one of our ESG experts, METTE KJAER. She knows more about the EU Taxonomy than I know the catalog of Netflix, which is saying a lot. So please do ask her all of your very challenging questions. A little housekeeping before we start. Everyone's muted, so please, if you have a question, type it into the chat function and we will do our best to answer at the end of the webinar during the Q&A. A little bit about responsibility before we start. We are experts in sustainable investing in emerging markets. We invest in climate finance, from green lending to CNI solar to energy access and much more. Also, we invest in sustainable food across the entire agricultural value chain, and also in financial inclusion, such as microfinance and fintech. All right, I will hand over now to Samuel and METTE, and I will join again at the end for the Q&A. Over to you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Stacey, for the introduction. A warm welcome, good morning, good afternoon to all the attendees we have here. I see we have quite the turnout today. Also a very warm welcome to you, METTE. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Before we start, me asking you a whole lot of questions, we would like to get to know the audience a bit better, and we would like to know from you how familiar are you actually with the EU taxonomy? Now, you, METTE, you don't get to answer this poll because we already know that you're the pro. I'm definitely at the very bottom of taxonomy question mark. So we'll be very interested on what your take on this topic is before we get started. And I see our numbers are still rising. There's still some people arriving, so take advantage of taking a look at the poll.
Just a few more seconds. We have a few more people still voting.
Very good. It is, I think, METTE and I, we've had a chat earlier as well. It is definitely something that's in everybody's mouth at the moment on what this is actually about, and we can see this from the turnout that there's definitely a very big interest on this topic.
Definitely, yeah. Will be interesting to see the result. Okay, very interesting.
Very
so I know a little about it. Is a majority turnout. And I would say that this is definitely a sign that there is awareness about this topic, and yeah, that people are definitely having an interest in this. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think people seem like they've heard about it. There still seems to be quite a lot of question marks about this topic, and I think taking this as a takeaway for this webinar, I would like to get started with maybe asking you first, METTE, what does the taxonomy have in common with the EU Action Plan, Paris Agreement, Net Zero, all these kind of things? How does this fit into the context to get a first impression of it?
Yes, good question. Let me maybe start to explain about the EU taxonomy in brief. So the EU taxonomy is a classification tool that defines which economic activities that can be categorized as environmentally sustainable. So in other words, it defines which investments that are green. And so the intention with the EU taxonomy is to provide all market participants with a common understanding and a common language of to what is green. And so the EU has developed this EU taxonomy, which is a part of the EU Action Plan on Sustainable Finance, first of all, in order to avoid greenwashing in the financial sector, but also in order to reach the EU target of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, which is in line with the Paris Agreement. And so the EU taxonomy has three main criteria. The first one is that an investment must substantially contribute to at least 1 out of 6 environmental objectives defined by the EU. This same investment must prove that it's not doing any significant harm to any of the 5 other environmental objectives. And this investment must also comply with the minimum safeguards on social requirements. And to the participants, if you would like to see this in written, I can recommend you to have a look at the handout, which you can find at the right-hand side of the screen. And if you really want expert knowledge
into this topic, I can recommend you to have a look at all the plenty of info which is out there, especially when it comes to the EU's webpage.
Okay. Very good. So you've touched upon the topic of the financial industry and on how investments are being done. And I think at the moment that there's not a day that goes by where another bank or investment manager is launching the next green fund or the next sustainable fund. But what does this actually mean for the financial industry, for all these companies that are offering different financial solutions to people like us who are common investors?
Yeah, so as already mentioned, one of the main intentions with the EU taxonomy is to create this common understanding and a common language of what a sustainable investment is. And it's also to avoid greenwashing. And this is really highly needed because until now, there has not been, so to say, a clear definition of what qualifies as sustainable. And this makes it quite easy to label different investments as sustainable. An example of this is actually in Switzerland, where the investments that are labeled as sustainable has tripled just within 2 years, so from 2017 to 2019, and where in 2019, the amount claimed to be sustainable summed up to 1.1 trillion Swiss francs. And this can really happen as almost none of the financial products are getting externally verified against specific sustainability criteria. So as it is now, the sustainable finance industry is very intransparent and could even be described as misleading. But so now with the EU taxonomy, everyone in the EU will be required to have the same definitions of what a sustainable investment is, because now there is a regulatory requirement. And so this means that everyone must migrate into this new definition. And yeah, there are several discussions going on how to actually do this. And no, it will not be easy, but it has to be done. And it will definitely boost the sustainable finance industry, and I would say it can also potentially contribute to the fight against climate change.
Okay, so we've looked a bit at the offering side now, and there's certain, as you mentioned, since everybody needs to shift, there's also a load of challenges. But I would like to take a quick look also from an investor side. How can you use the taxonomy to make investment decisions, for example?
Very good question. So I would say the EU taxonomy can definitely be used in the future to really understand how an investment is contributing to an environmental objective. So it can be used because it sets different requirements to what an investment firm must disclose for the investments that it's claimed to be sustainable. So therefore, in the future, it will be possible for investors to really compare between different investment opportunities and to make an investment decision based on its sustainability preferences. And later on, there will be established an EU eco-label on sustainable financial products, which will make it even more easy for investors to identify sustainable investments. And so the expected requirements of this label is that 60% of the investments in a fund must adhere to the EU taxonomy requirements. But when that's said, we will see how the final version of this EU label turns out, since the final criteria have not been defined.
Okay, so we still have some way to go, but there is hope that in this growing jungle there will be some more clarity for investors as well. Stacey mentioned in the introduction that we at responsAbility, we are an impact, a sustainable investment manager. How does the EU taxonomy, and now again jumping a bit back to the offering side, how does that affect companies that are already offering products that are considered sustainable? How do they have to interpret these new norms and regulations?
Yeah, so actually we've done a case study together with the UN organization Principles for Responsible Investments on how to actually implement the EU taxonomy as investment managers as us. And we have actually uploaded a case study. You can also find this at the right-hand side of the screen. And here we've described our main findings, but also challenges that we've identified during this exercise. But yeah, of course, I'll also try to summarize it here. So as responsAbility is investing in non-listed companies and in emerging markets only, we will have another approach compared to many other European investors, where the majority of these are investing in listed companies and many of them in the EU. So in order for them to calculate the alignment with the EU taxonomy, they can use third-party data, or they can use data that the companies have reported themselves against this taxonomy. But yeah, we in responsAbility cannot rely on third-party data nor on data that these companies have disclosed themselves. So this means that we have to do this assessment ourselves, including data gathering, reporting, monitoring, and etc. But I would say luckily, since we have now for many years been proactively working on these topics and these aspects, I would say we're well equipped to do this.
Okay, that's definitely good to hear. One thing I would also like to touch base, and you also mentioned it a little bit, the geographic component of the taxonomy. And when you look at also, for example, the title of the webinar, it's the EU taxonomy. So one could think that this kind of falls in the boundaries of the EU. So first to start off, my question is also, are there other forms of taxonomy? Are there other regions or blocks that are thinking sort of in the same direction? And is there some kind of coordination going on between those blocks?
As far as I know, there are only a few other taxonomies out there on the market. I know that, for instance, Mongolia and Canada have developed taxonomies, and I don't see any collaboration so far. But yeah, as this topic is really highly relevant, I expect that there will be more taxonomies coming up. But when that's said, the EU taxonomy does nevertheless have a quite broad geographical coverage. So in the way that asset managers located in the EU but are investing sustainably outside of the EU, they will still have to disclose against the taxonomy. So this means that the companies distributed all over the world will actually be also affected by this EU taxonomy.
Okay, so that means also investors like responsAbility, who's not necessarily involved in European investments, will obviously have to cope with this expanded reach
Yes.
in other jurisdictions. Moving a bit forward, I would also like to look at some of the other important elements that come from the EU Action Plan on Sustainable Finance. Can you give us, broadening the scope a bit, give us an insight into that as well?
Yeah, I can try. So besides the EU taxonomy, which is one of the most important elements in the EU Action Plan on sustainable finance, the EU has also defined other, quite impactful elements. One of them is this sustainable finance disclosure regulation, as you just mentioned, Samuel. And this one requires that asset managers that are having an ESG framework in place or that are promoting environmental and social topics, they will have to disclose different things, so such as policies or investment methodologies, how sustainability risks are integrated in their investment decisions, and etc. And this has to happen both on web pages, in contracts, and in periodic reports. So this regulation is quite comprehensive as well, but I see it as it will really increase the transparency of ESG investing in the financial market. Another aspect is that there will also be a regulation that requires that asset managers must advise its clients based on their sustainability preferences. And so this means that these asset managers or asset managers in general must offer sustainable products over other products if this client is preferring sustainability. There will also, as already mentioned, be established an EU eco-label on sustainable products, which will be given to financial products that can show that minimum 60% of the investments are aligned with the EU taxonomy criteria. So there are plenty of things going on and plenty of things in the making, and I would say they're all contributing to avoiding greenwashing in the financial sector and to boost sustainable finance.
Okay. I mean, I think definitely the component of having to ask people what their sustainability preferences are is a big step forward. In my opinion, at least. And I think it goes beyond than just to mitigate financial risks. And following up on that, we would like to now hear from our listeners or from our attendees. What do you think? Do you think that the EU taxonomy can be a game changer for the sustainable finance industry? Or is it just another regulatory framework that that banks have to adhere to? What do you think, Mette?
Yeah, as you have might heard, I'm very happy about this taxonomy. I think there's great potential with this taxonomy, but I'm definitely interested in hearing and seeing what our participants are answering here. If yeah, our participants are sharing the same passion and view as me.
Probably also would be interesting to know which industry they're from, to see if there's some different point of views depending on the industry that you're maybe working or functioning in.
Exactly, that could very well be. Okay.
So here we have the results.
So they're a bit mixed actually, and so I mean, I definitely share participants' opinion here. So there are great potential with this EU taxonomy, but there will of course also be concerns related to this, as this is a quite complex topic and very comprehensive to implement.
I think a lot of it probably also has to do that there's still so many question marks that it's still relatively difficult to measure what actual effect this can have in the long run. And so, okay, so before wrapping up and moving over to the Q&A, I believe we will have quite plenty of Q&A, so I'd like to leave sufficient time for that. Could you just give it in a wrap up in 3 sentences? How would you summarize the EU taxonomy and its impact on sustainable finance? Short and snappy.
Yeah, I'll try. So first of all, finally, there will be a standard out there which creates a common understanding and a common language of what is sustainable. And so since there will be this, it will also change the behavior of many European investors, meaning more focus into this topic and probably also more products being offered in this aspect. And then, lastly, I would say that the EU taxonomy is a massive opportunity. So do yourself the favor to familiarize yourself with this standard.
Wonderful. You got the call to action. Now we would like to move over to the Q&A session. So this is your opportunity to ask any and all questions around the topic.
And we definitely have some coming in very quickly here. So let's start at the top of the list. This taxonomy obviously focuses on the E in ESG, and METTE mentioned there may be a small requirement. Sorry, I can't read. A small requirement to evidence no harm done in terms of the S in ESG. Will it take into account the G in ESG at all? As an investigator myself, I see plenty of unworthy investees, corrupt, linked to terrorists, etc. Yikes! Using green or social credentials to attract investments with ease.
Oh yeah, good question. So as mentioned in the beginning, there will be these 3 main criteria, and one of them is very much linked to the S side of the investment. So here it will be required that investment must follow the minimum safeguard on social requirements, and so this includes, for instance, the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. So yes, the EU taxonomy is taking into account some of these aspects, but it could definitely be expanded more in the future if it actually also covers how to substantially contribute to social or governance objectives. Definitely, yeah.
All right, next question, a shorter one. The EU Action Plan will push for more reporting on ESG, but will this reporting become merely box ticking?
Yeah, it of course has an element of compliance here. So of course you would have to, as an asset manager or investor, to tick boxes to ensure that you have done all the things that you have to when it comes to disclosing. But when that's said, there are really plenty of opportunities to also elaborate on this topic and to really actually explain how these aspects are taken into account in investment processes.
All right, next question. This might be a tough one, Mette, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. Do you know what China and the US are doing about this, since they are the biggest polluters?
To be honest, I don't know this one. Yeah, but it will be very interesting to see whether there's actually something going on here. But yeah, so I'm curious how this will evolve.
Okay, this one's specific. What are the specific disclosure requirements of this taxonomy regulation, and how do those requirements work together with the disclosure regulation requirements?
Oh yeah, this is a tricky one. I'll try my best to answer it. So when it comes to the taxonomy, investors will have to disclose, first of all, the alignment with the EU taxonomy. So how big of a percentage of the investments are aligned with the exact criteria outlined in the EU taxonomy. And this will happen both, so to say, on web pages, but also in periodic reports. And so how does it, so to say, align with the disclosure regulation? So the disclosure regulation differentiate between investments that are having an ESG framework in place, but then investments that are really contributing to environmental objectives. So there will be extra requirements to investments that are contributing to an environmental objectives, meaning aligned with the EU taxonomy.
Super. Okay. Can the EU taxonomy contribute to phase harmful subsidies out, for example, in agriculture or fisheries? And if so, how?
So the EU taxonomy is not a tool that is saying what you cannot invest in. It helps to guide investors in what they have to invest in if they want to invest sustainably. So there is no exclusion list, so to say, when it comes to the EU taxonomy. But as said before, the EU taxonomy will definitely change the behavior of many European investors, and with so to say more focus into environmental objectives. So it could be that yeah, this taxonomy will actually also help in that regard.
Okay, this is also maybe a tough one, but let's put it out there. It's interesting. Many economies still rely on a carbon-based industry. This industry still generates wealth and is taxed to support public infrastructure and services. How would this EU taxonomy secure the energy transition in a smooth manner without letting such social issues suffer or fade away?
Oh yeah, tough question. No, I'll try my best to answer this. So what I mentioned before, the EU taxonomy doesn't say what you, or it doesn't say what you cannot invest in. So it just kind of help investors to streamline or focus more on environmental topics. So I see this transition, smooth transition, it can definitely still happen, even though this EU taxonomy is in place, but it's kind of to gradually relocate investments into more sustainability related aspects.
All right, this one I think will be easier for you, Mette. What were the main challenges when trying to define the alignment of responsibilities portfolio?
Sorry, can you repeat?
What were the main challenges when trying to define the percentage of alignment of responsibilities portfolio?
Yeah, so there are different challenges here. One of the main aspects which were not clear is when it comes to the do no significant harm aspect. So the EU taxonomy use EU regulation to say whether or not companies are doing any significant harm to different environmental aspects. And so the thing for us is that we invest only in non-EU countries and where this regulation doesn't apply. So one of the first challenges we actually had was to identify well, what does then apply to the companies that we invest in? And so once we have then identified these aspects, we could then, or identify what applies then for the companies we invest in, we could then start screening these requirements against our portfolio companies. Yeah, and so generally, once we have these requirements, we will then also have to merge our ESG framework into this. So this is just one main challenge that we've been facing.
Super. All right. Who decides what is sustainable? What if there's an argument? Is there an appeal process?
So the EU defines what is sustainable. Actually, I don't know how this will go in the future, but definitely these are the requirements out there now when it comes to, or at least for European investors, when they say they invest sustainable, they will have to follow these criteria that are now outlined.
Good. Another question then. There is certainly value in creating transparency. However, it comes at a significant cost if economic activities are outside the EU. Is this not detrimental to smaller players?
It could be, yes, because this is quite comprehensive, and we'll see how this also applies over time and develops over time. So far, yes, the bigger market players have an advantage when it comes to integrating this and following the criteria. But over time, since this is so comprehensive and big, it will also, yeah, be possible for smaller companies to align with these criteria.
Okay. All right, next we have greetings from snowy Quebec. Question, would you agree that if the taxonomy really is effective and that compliant investments are truly contributing to the SDGs, this would translate into a price signal with truly sustainable investments commanding a sort of premium from serious and committed institutional investors?
This could very well be, yeah, difficult to say at this point of time, but yeah, this could definitely be an outcome. Yeah.
Okay. Then to which extent can we consider the EU taxonomy becoming a universal standard?
To which extent? I mean, as I said here, it's covering really broadly, so to say, so geographically very broad. So in that sense, it is already a really key tool, also seen from a global perspective. And I could very well imagine that other taxonomies or similar regulations and frameworks will kind of align with the EU taxonomy. So I think this is quite likely to happen in the future. Yeah.
Okay. Next, if I understood correctly, it is up to the asset manager to analyze and follow the regulation. How is the EU checking whether the reporting on taxonomy disclosure was done correctly?
Yeah, so I assume that this will be checked on a regular basis, but as said, this is a regulatory requirement, so it's really up to investors and asset managers to ensure that they are in compliance with these requirements.
Good. I'll do one more question here before we sign off. Let's see. Yeah, this is a good one. I think you've covered this, but it's a good reminder. Will investments that qualify for the EU taxonomy standard be able to advertise that fact? Can it be a stamp of approval to differentiate it from other investments?
I would definitely say so. So if you can show and prove that your investments are aligned with the EU taxonomy, this can definitely be used to brand yourself and the investment products that you have. And so this is also actually the intention with the EU taxonomy as I see it.
Perfect. All right, we'll wrap up here. Thank you everyone for joining. We didn't get to all the questions, so Samuel or Mette will try to email everyone whose question we didn't get to. And please follow us on LinkedIn for further webinars, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.